Hello, everyone. Welcome to our Tuesday Talks with Greg. My name is Greg Jamiel, and I am so excited to be introducing you to one of my friends, Daniel from Germany. And Daniel today is going to talk to us about his different tools to help you smudge. Now, for those of you who have been with me for a while, you have learned about smudging and we've practiced this together. And so I wanted you to meet Daniel and see some of his tools and his incense that he creates by hand and hear from him a different perspective of how to work with these tools. So Daniel, welcome to our talk today.
Thank you so much, Gregory. It's great to be here.
Awesome. Well, and how is everything over in Berlin?
It's pretty hot. I guess it's really hot over there as well, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah, we're sweating away. Well, Daniel, can you tell us a little bit about how you became interested in working with these different tools? So I want to show everyone too, Daniel was kind enough to send over this absolutely beautiful fan that he created for me. I'll put it this way so you can see it without the sun. And just absolutely gorgeous, Daniel. Thank you so much for this beautiful gift. And so I wanted to have Daniel express a little bit about how his process works, you know, how he goes through and finds the different wood. And he also makes saddles. He works with leather. So maybe talking a little bit about that and how you incorporate those into your fans too.
Yes, for sure. So I guess the first time I've ever come across something like a smudge fan was, probably being part of a yoga ceremony or something
Yeah.
similar. And it absolutely made sense, to see it and kind of that image stuck in my mind. I think, we were using sage,
Yeah.
and the smudging ritual, so cleansing, and it felt so natural, and not, I wasn't like surprised by it, like, what is this? It felt like really, oh, okay, yeah, it makes sense. So that image stuck in my mind, and then subconsciously at some point this idea just popped, into my mind about creating a smudge fan myself. It's like, I love, working with my hands and creating things, and so that's very kind of natural to me. And I mean, feathers are like the most beautiful thing on this planet to work with, as almost like as a material, and so it came really natural. Yeah.
And then, so when you work with those, Daniel, do you, when you do your own smudging ceremony at home, like how did you get started on that? Because a lot of people in our group here have worked with me in learning how to smudge and why they would smudge. But I want to know a little bit about your perspective. When you do this for yourself at home, when would you smudge? When would you light that ceremony for yourself or for your home or for your new child?
That's wonderful. Thank you. Um, um, so, at certain times, I introduce a regular kind of ritual, and they sometimes naturally disappear. And sometimes, I wonder, oh, it's gone. Why is that? So, sometimes it's a ritual I keep, for new moon or full moon ceremonies, for example, or if I want to set intentions, or but most often, or when I feel it's like when it's most powerful for me, is when I feel the need to um, reconnect, to ground myself, to get rid of something, to really go through some sort of cleansing, and that's when the idea of a medicine tool, it really becomes like of importance, a tool of importance, because it's there when you really need it, and that's when it's most powerful, because you really need it at this point. And so then, yeah, that's mostly in the evening when I'm kind of, I don't know, totally tired of something, or really feel the need to get something out.
And
And
to shift the energy in your body and mind is kind of like make that shift, right?
exactly, yes.
Well, and it's beautiful too, because these tools, you mentioned them as tools, right? And because they're comprised, I'll show you again this one here, because they're comprised of so many different elements, the energy of the pheasant, the energy of the peacock, the energy of the leather. So, we know leather comes from an animal. At one time, this animal was alive. And when we talk about the drums later on here, those are full on bringing the spirit of that animal back to life when you're drumming. So a similar thing happens when you're incorporating that leather into these tools too. And the beautiful thing that I always see when I work with fans is the unification of spirits almost makes that tool more powerful. So for example, you have the wood here, you have the leather, you have the different feathers, and you're working with that direction of north, the air direction. And so you're moving that smoke around by this feather. And so together it kind of unifies and it creates something greater than each one of those individual pieces. Another comparison I think that's important to make too is when we do the smudging with our abalone shell. So we use our lighter, which represents the east and fire, the abalone shell, which represents the south and water. Whatever plant we're using is the west and the earth element. And then of course, the north is the air. So just lighting one of these things on its own is a beautiful gift. But when you combine all four of those elements, all four of those directions, something more powerful happens. And so can you speak on that a little bit for you personally? How does that, how do you build a fan? How do you choose to assemble different energies of different feathers and put them together?
That was a beautiful introduction. Thank you for that. And so I guess it's different. At first I never want to say that I actively create these things, it's never that I say, oh, wow, I created this Smudge Fan. It's this wanted to be created, right? And so I guess, at certain times I see something, so that enters my subconscious mind, and then I see something else like shapes and forms, and then and all of a sudden like this idea pops into my mind, and most often it's triggered by either I find a piece of beautiful wood on the beach, or when I go for long walks through the forest, black forest here in Germany. But that's probably a familiar thing, right? Yes. Black forest, and so there are lots of hardwood trees, and sometimes the roots. So I most often work with the roots of the tree, because some trees are they grow close to a river, and they fall into the river, and the parts of the roots are being washed away, and they have the most beautiful shape and form. They look so, and the idea of the root itself, from a tree, is also very powerful, because it's what we hold in our hands. It's the base of the Smudge Fan, and it's going to last forever. That's so beautiful. And also the being washed through the riverbed with the sand. It's already being kind of, I don't know, just perfectly shaped most often. And so I look at these, and sometimes I think this is never going to work for a Smudge Fan. And then at some point I look at it from a different angle, and all of a sudden there's a new kind of perspective on things. And then on the other side, so that's one direction, like a new idea for a Smudge Fan pops into my mind. And another way is when I see a different type of feather, or a certain shape or a certain color that I've never worked with before. But I can talk about what kind of feathers I use in a bit. And so that again gives me then an inspiration for, I would love to make a fan with these type of feathers. And then I go through the wood I have, and then I find the perfect matching handle. And and then I think the binding, the leather, that's what I call, that's the element between the feathers and the wood. The binding element, that's the leather. That's something I kind of hold next to when I have the feathers laid out, like what works, what creates a nice flow, kind of. Yeah.
So Daniel, you mentioned the different feathers that you use. Can you talk a little bit more about why you would choose, like on mine, you have pheasant and there's some peacock feathers. And I noticed on some of your other ones, these beautiful reds and oranges. What calls you to work with different feathers that you find?
So let me start off. When I purchased the feathers, so I'm not purchasing the feathers. I'm trading the feathers with a friend of mine who's a taxidermist, and so he's got great sources for feathers, and so I trade leather, and he's giving me feathers, and each time he's getting a new kind of delivery, he's Daniel, oh my God, look at these feathers, they're so beautiful. And so where he's getting the feathers from, and he's licensed, so that's also very important. He's getting the feathers from different sources within Europe. That's very important, because you can get feathers from all over the world, and many come from China, and the let's say the focus in China is more on the meat production, so they don't really care too much about the feathers. So the feathers are being plucked mechanically, and so you see, if you have feathers of not as good for quality, they have broken tips. Right, so that's a good indicator, good indicator for the kind of source it is. And so the feathers I work with are always, intact. They're very clean and they're not broken. That's also a very good indicator of, are these birds being kind of put together in a very close, in small encagement, for example.
Sure.
And I always work with feathers from species who aren't endangered in any form. So often I get questions about, I would like a smudge fan made of owl or hawk, eagle, like that. And yes, I always, that's not what I do.
Yeah, and in the States too, it's illegal, for just to make this known for everyone too. In the States, unless you are a native, you cannot have a bird of prey as an eagle feather or a hawk or anything like that. So yeah, it's good that you're aware of that and don't work with those. So.
That's exactly. And I mean, if you find feathers, yourself, there are certain steps you can go through to prepare and clean the feathers. Sure. But I would never ever try to go on a plane with these feathers. You can get in real trouble.
And so can you tell me, if someone is asking for a fan, do you create them specifically for people when you have them in mind? Or do you let the fan be created and then the person can kind of choose which one associates best with them? Or how does that process work for you?
Sometimes there are fans that I feel need to be created.
Yes.
And then most often there are people who resonate so much with it that they say that they claim the smudge fan for themselves, and which is awesome. I love that. But most often we go through a process of finding the right medicine tool for the person. So what kind of colors, what kind of shape, also what kind of wood. Yes, and so you're talking about colors. I work with some feathers are naturally colored, and some feathers are dyed in different colors, and the colors I work with are it's a natural dye. It's not very intense, and the thing is, these feathers are so beautiful. You can almost dye them with any color; they would still look amazing. Yeah. It's because of the physical structure of the feather, because these little these are like it's not these are not hairs, they are kind of hollow. Sure. So they create this kind of
like a sponge, like absorbing the color.
Yeah, they're absorbing the color, but still they're creating this reflection, almost a little bit like a rainbow. So this optical glow. Yeah, and so especially when you turn the feather, like the smudge fan around and see the back of it, it's like there's this polished glow, almost like gold. Gold has a similar property. It's like it's shining, and so yeah, and some people would like would like a certain color because it's energetically what they feel drawn to.
Awesome. Well, and now you also make your own incense, and that's something new for you too. So can you talk a little bit about how you put your incense together, or what type of incense plants that you work with? What type of plants you work with to create your incense blends?
Sure. So I make incense sticks. So not dried herbs in that way. So and let me put it that way. I started very basic, very, very, very simple, and I work with copal. So the resin, like the resin of the tree, and sandalwood, for example. And these are two that I personally feel so drawn to. And the reason why almost everyone loves copal is because it's one of the most basic aromatic molecules. So it's almost the foundation for every other smell or scent. And so it's a very like unify, like a worldwide like scent and smell that everyone kind of feels a connection to. And it reminds us from of being like in front of a fire and having a piece, a branch burned in the fire, and then you smell that that aroma coming out of the fire. So it's a very almost like a primal sensation. And so and the ingredients for the incense sticks is I work with the coal, for these little pellets, these little and and they have some sort of active ingredient, so they burn a little quicker, and so I grind them up. So it's I always make sure so the sourcing is also that's the most complicated part, because I want to make sure these are either like fair trade products or somehow certified sources that I work with, because I don't want to want people to cut down their forest so that they can sell something, so that they can feed their children. I mean, obviously this is what ideally they'd be able to feed their children, but I don't monetize on that at all. So I want to make sure that there's there's fair payment, and there's also like a perspective on sustaining the forest, right? The active forest. And and so it's almost like baking a cake, when I make these incense sticks. So it's finding out the right mixture between the coal and then how much copal. I freeze it, and then I grind it up, because copal otherwise it's very sticky, and also frankincense, for example, is also very sticky. So I freeze it, and then I can grind it up, and then I work with gum arabica. This is like the sticky ingredient, keeps everything kind of sticking together, and I roll it, and I'm only mixing 2 components for each incense stick together, and then they have to dry for quite some time, because you don't want them to kind of burn a millimeter and then stop, and you have to light them again. So yes.
Well, and then one final question I have for you, Daniel, is so this process of working with incense and with these fans and moving the smoke around is a tradition that is found all around the world, whether it is in the Chinese temples or the different Celtic ceremonies. And so where do you learn these ceremonies from? Who are your teachers when it comes to connecting with these type of ceremonies, or this working with incense?
Thank you. Very interesting question. I always try to go back as far as possible. And so, as you say, these things or these traditions and rituals have evolved on this planet, simultaneously and independently. And so it's almost like a if the soil is perfect, the flower is going to come. And I try to keep it distant from any culture or tradition, right? So I take the essence of it, working with incense, burning a plant material, and to create this sensation, you know, and yeah, I don't really focus on any cultural aspect, because this is something I would like to leave up to the person who is going to, you know, purchase the incense or the smudge fan and do it. Yeah, because, you know, right where we are right now, we are so mixed. Like, you know, we have so many different cultures and traditions, and some people are integrate, you know, some of this tradition, some of that tradition, and this is something I would like to leave totally up to the person. So I go back as far as possible.
Yeah.
Yeah, when I think about the ritual itself.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that. And I also want to thank you, Daniel, for coming on all the way from Germany. I know it's late at night where you are, and I'm just really grateful that you spent this time and got to meet our group here and share your wisdom and knowledge. And for those of you who are watching this on Facebook, you can like our page and follow us. If you're watching this on YouTube, be sure to subscribe to it and hit that little bell so that you can be notified of other interviews like this that we're doing. And to learn more about Daniel and look at his different products, his fans, his incense, and even his leather work, you can go to basarab.com. And can you spell that out for us, Daniel?
Yes, it's basarabdrums.com.
basarabdrums.com. There you go. And so can you spell it?
Oh, hang on. Okay, it's BASARAB.
Yep.
And then drums.com.
Perfect. Well, thank you again, Daniel. I really appreciate that. And thank you taking that time to remember English over there, those letters. So thank you guys again, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks so much. Take care.
Take care.